any time that you spend doing something that you're not passionate about, that you know is not your calling, the longer you spend doing that, the greater your chances are of becoming extraordinarily ordinary. And that hit me hard. I was like, oh, it takes tremendous courage to step up and say, this isn't in my wheelhouse, or this isn't what I'm meant to do. But, the longer you wait, the greater your chances are of just settling in and being ordinary.
Welcome to the Cash Flow Fight Club podcast, in the Champions Corner edition. I'm Mike Deaton, and together with Lygia, my co-host in life, business, and this podcast, we're taking you into the training room, deep in the dojo, sharing the secrets of what it takes to forge a champion. We're going to dig deep into mindset mastery, high performance habits, best-in-class behaviors, and get you the tips and techniques that maximize human potential, all brought to you from some of the best in the business. So grab your buds and your seat, hit subscribe, and get ready to up your game. Let's do the show.
Let's do it.
Today, we are so excited to have Annie Dickerson join us for this In the Champions Corner episode. Annie has channeled her inner rebel and her drive for justice to create an incredibly successful real estate investing company. That central mission is all about helping others take advantage of the incredible benefits of real estate. She's an award-winning real estate investing expert with over 15 years of experience in the industry. She was named Real Estate Investor of 2022 by none other than the Motley Fool. She's the co-founder and chief operating officer of Good Egg Investments, an incredibly successful real estate investing company that has acquired over 8,000 multifamily units, totaling over $1.3 billion with a B, and was recently named Best Real Estate Syndication Company in North America. Annie also is and has been a coach to hundreds of other aspiring entrepreneurs, teaching them how to effectively raise capital to acquire real estate assets. She's most recently helped launch MoneyWise Kids, a program that's designed to teach financial literacy to kids across the United States. She's an author, podcast host, coach, mentor, and most importantly, a rock star wife and mom. On this episode, we venture into so many great areas of life that drive success. The importance of listening to your inner calling, being true to your core values, the power of secret investments that have been kept away from Main Street investors, how to find the perfect business partner, and so much more. Let's jump into the Champions Corner with Annie Dickerson. Annie, thanks for coming on the show today. We're happy to have you.
I'm thrilled to be here with you both and all of your listeners as well.
Thanks. For this episode, we thought we could do a little Q&A with you. Just maybe start off with giving us a bit about your background and how you found your way into real estate and how that's evolved over the last 15 plus years since you've been in real estate.
Whew, it's a big question. And, the first thing I think the listener should know about me is I wasn't one of those kids or those people that wanted to ever get into business or real estate. It was never on my radar. In fact, all through growing up, my parents and I lived in apartments. And it just never occurred to me there was somebody who owned the apartments. And every month I knew my parents were paying their rent check somewhere, but I just assumed it was a big company or something. It was, outside of my realm, outside of my sphere. And so I never gave that any thought. And, I did the whole, I came to the States when I was 4 with my family. And so immigrant family, had that whole mentality drilled into me, straight A's, Ivy League school, followed all the rules, didn't make any trouble, right? That was my path. I was going to climb the corporate ladder. And the first time I sort of broke the rules and it was a little bit of a rebel was I graduated from my Ivy League school and I told my mom, hey, I'm going to go teach 4th grade. And she said, what? And not only that, I taught 4th grade in inner city schools. So high crime, high poverty neighborhood as part of Teach for America. And I just, from a young age, I was always bought into these big missions of changing the world and having an impact. So I started off as a classroom teacher, then went into game design, video games, believe it or not, to try to make educational games for kids, and then got into adult learning and development. And all along the way, real estate was never on my radar. But my husband and I happened to fall into this thing that we now call house hacking. So we bought a duplex in Washington, D.C. That's where we first lived together, and rented out the basement apartment. And it seemed to work, but I just thought, yep, this is just something that we do. Didn't think anything further of it. Yeah, exactly. Until it was 2017. My husband had become a real estate agent since we had moved to the Bay Area. And of course, being the inner rebel, the quiet rebel that I am, as soon as he became a real estate agent, I was like, well, I'm going to cross real estate off my list. We can't both be in real estate. That would be ridiculous. So he started off his career in real estate, and he really loved it. And so in 2017, he asked me to help with his business. I went in fighting and screaming, but finally I conceded to redoing his website. And in the process of doing so, I fell in love with real estate, not the real estate that he does, but investing in real estate. And so one thing led to another, and I became obsessed with investing in these small multifamilies. I thought, this is my way out. I had had 10 jobs in the nine jobs in the 10 years after college, and I was just done with the corporate world. I was like, this isn't for me. I didn't want to start a business. I didn't even know anything about being an entrepreneur at that point. I was just like, if I can find a way where I can replace my salary, then I don't have to work. And then I can solve this whole job problem and focus on other things. So that was really...
Just to interrupt a little bit, you had a bit of a push and a pull, right? You had the pull and the allure of this real estate income generating business model. What was the push exactly out of, like, were you dissatisfied in some way with the job hopping or the insecurity, or just like for me, it was politics and different things in the corporate world, but just curious.
Experienced all of it. Politics, bureaucracy, red tape, all of it. At that time in 2017, I was working as a creative director at a learning and development agency, building trainings for companies like Google, Facebook, whatnot. And I thought, this is like the pinnacle. This is like, this title and this job should be it. Like, this should be, on paper, everything that I love to do, everything that I worked so hard for. And yet I was so unfulfilled. And the day-to-day of what I was doing, I was actually spending a lot of time managing different designers, creating PowerPoint decks. PowerPoint decks. It was mind-numbing work. And I was like, I can't do this for the rest of my life. And I thought, well, if I can't go up, maybe there's a way I can go a different direction. And really, I think that was the push. Was I woke up one day and I was like, I can't do another PowerPoint deck. I just can't do it. And I don't want to do it. I had small kids at the time. I was like, I don't want to do another career shift or go back to school. But maybe this real estate thing, maybe this could be my way out. And so that's, one thing led to another, started investing in small multifamilies.
Those like recourse 4 units and less.
Yes, type, exactly. Yeah. Fourplexes at the time we were investing heavily in Huntsville, Alabama, and became obsessed with it. So much so that I was talking to friends and family about it, and quickly realized that a lot of them wanted to invest in real estate as well. They just didn't want to do any of the work. They wanted me to do all the work. And so I said, maybe there's a way. I don't know of a way right now, but let me look into it. So I started first to look at joint ventures and see if that was viable. And then through my research, this was late 2017, discovered syndications. And in early 2018, January of 2018, I quit my job and went full in, having never done a syndication before, having never raised any capital before. But I was like, this is the path. I'm going to figure this out one way or another. And then we created our business later that year, and it's been going strong ever since.
And you said we, is this Julie
Yes.
or your husband? Yeah. Okay.
Yes, this is with Julie. So Julie and I met. There are no accidents. We literally met the week after I quit my job. And so we met at a conference. We both were based in the Bay Area at the time, and we met at a conference in Denver. And so we really we gelled because of our mutual passion for helping other women, moms, families get into real estate. So that was sort of the beginning of our partnership.
That's awesome. Yeah. So many elements in there. So this particular episode, and these types of episodes that we're doing are exactly about what does it take to form a champion, or to really succeed in these things. So we really want to dive into your mindset and your motivation, and get under the hood and see what's really driving Annie, and what's helped build you into a success story that you guys have. I think very, very successful company. It's really inspirational for us, at least.
Yes.
Both. But we were just touching on partnership here with you and Julie finding each other. So maybe let's talk a little bit about some of the highs and lows and how you navigate. I know when you guys, I think just from our personal background with each other, I think I've heard you talk about your early days with Julie, and how you guys really consciously sat down and intentionally talked about what a partnership would look like, what you would each bring into the partnership, and crafting that shared vision. So maybe just walk us through a little bit about that, because I think that's very, very helpful for a lot of us, especially in this real estate space where we are partnering with different people, be it our spouse or someone, a stranger. I don't know which is better.
Indeed. I know. I was going to say, you guys are even braver than we were. Because, when Julie and I first partnered up, we were strangers. So, if something happened and we were to walk away, we would be right. More or less no worse off.
Yeah.
But the fact that you guys are making it work, with your spouse, that's huge. And I admire you both so much, and I'm inspired by you both as well. So as for our partnership, for the listener, if you're considering forming a partnership with someone, there's an activity or an exercise that Julie and I did that came from the creative design world that early on really helped us to get to know each other better, not just who we were, but how we did things. Mm-hmm. And so once we figured out that we had complementary skill sets, we were open to the idea of partnering. And so we came together at this cafe, co-working space, and I brought a bunch of Post-its and Sharpies. And what we did was we said, okay, let's just dream for 10 minutes and we set a timer and everything. We said, let's just dream about this business that we want to build. And each idea that we wanted to see come to fruition, we would write on a Post-it note. And we wouldn't look at each other's, for 10 minutes, we were just writing by ourselves and sticking them up on the wall. At the end of the 10 minutes, then we came together and we started to read each other's Post-it notes. And then we started to group them together. And we saw exactly how aligned we were. And we saw some of the ideas that the other person had that we didn't have. And here's the kicker is when things didn't quite align, then we had discussions around that. Oh, tell me what you were thinking about this. Oh, I really like that. Or, that's exactly what I was thinking here. And I worded it this way. Let's put that over here next to this one, because I definitely want to do that. Or, I wasn't thinking about that until, later on in the business. Let's put that, down here and maybe in the future. And so through that push and pull discussion, we were able to see the respect that we mutually had for each other. Mm-hmm. And there was no oh, that's a terrible idea. I definitely don't want to go down that path. There was a lot of mutual understanding, curiosity. And I think that told us both so much more than just the discussions we had had, because we were able to see a glimpse into how we could potentially work together. And so from there, then we, really started to formulate and create the partnership and define our roles and responsibilities, which have shifted so much over the years, but has always been a keystone of what has made for our strong partnership.
Yeah, I love that. Just hearing you tell that story, I was having the exact same thought that you just verbalized, but it sounds like, and I'd be interested to get your take on this, but it sounds like you both came into this partnership with a certain personality that was open-minded, not defensive in nature, and you kind of came into your collaboration with this forward-thinking view, right? You were doing your vision exercises and you're putting your dreams down on these Post-it notes, and so it was a lot more visionary and what can be, rather than and some people's natural personalities are a little more judgmental, or or people can get defensive. And so I don't know, is that something that you feel you've always had, or has that been cultivated, or similar with Julie, I guess?
Yeah. What a great question. I don't think anybody's ever asked me about where my openness comes from, but I think, it's been a value for both of us, I think, fostered differently, obviously. But, I think for me, I've always, I think in the 10 years after college, I worked a lot to unwind everything that I had been taught as part of an immigrant mentality, as somebody who's always following the rules, had gone through public school. There was a lot of that to unwind, a lot of those layers to shed. And I think in that process, I became more open, and I saw, how, different perspectives were very valuable. And so that's where I came from when we started the partnership, was I'm open. Let's see what we can do together.
Right.
And I think she was the same way.
Was Julie, was she in a similar career moment as you, like having been in some corporate environments and really yearning for some sense of freedom, control over your own path? Is that a similar place that she was?
So at that point when we met, she was in the legal field, and when we met, I had just quit my job and she was still working full time, but she had been raising capital on the side for several months before I even got into this business. And so at the point when we talked, I said, I just quit my job. And she said, what do you mean you quit your job? And I said, well, just, the whole no net thing, and, burn all the boats. And, I just did that thing. And she's like, what? Oh my gosh. And so unbeknownst to me, I didn't find this out until much later. She went home from the conference on Sunday and she put in her notice on Monday.
Oh, wow.
And so, so I think she had been feeling like the golden handcuffs, I think is where she was for a long time, where she was doing this on the side. But then through our conversation, she realized how much more and how much faster she could build this if she were to focus on it full time.
That's funny.
I really like what you said earlier, that nothing happens. There's no coincidence, and things happen for a reason. And I feel like when you are so open-minded, things just they're aligned to you. And it sounds like there was a divine moment for you both, that you both met and you both totally recognize each other as, this could be my partner, and started working on that. And I feel like many times when we cultivate that open-mindedness, we all of a sudden, our eyes get open, and we just recognize the opportunities ahead of us, which really we can fully label them as divine moments in life.
Yes, I couldn't agree more. And I think the that first conversation that Julie and I had, we didn't talk about partnership at all. She was going to do her business, continue working on her business, and I was going to start this new thing. And then, after a few months, we kept running into each other at these different events. And a few months later, we finally decided we were going to get together for coffee one day. And at that point, both of us had been working full-time in this business for about 3 months. And I think that was key too, because we were both trying to make a go of it on our own. So we saw the full breadth of what was involved. And so when we sat down, and I still remember it like it was yesterday, she asked me what I loved about this business. And I said, oh my gosh, Julie, I love all of the content and the education. If I could just write blog posts, create videos, and write emails all day, I would love that. If there's one thing, though, I could take off my calendar, it would be those investor calls. I love the investors, but, I hop on a call and it breaks up my day and I can't get into that creative flow. And she's watching me across the table. Her eyes are getting bigger. And she's like, oh my gosh, I've been doing the complete opposite for the last several months. She's like, I love those investor calls, but I sit down in front of the blank screen. The cursor's blinking at me. I know I'm supposed to write a blog post. I don't know where to start. And so I think it was only through each of us having experienced that we were then able to we knew right in that moment, we were like, oh, you fill that gap that I have. Yep. Mm-hmm. Exactly.
That's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I just piggybacking a little bit off of what Lydia was saying, and also our earlier conversation, this came to mind, but one of our favorite books is Mindset by Carol Dweck, which talks about a fixed mindset versus a growth mindset. And I do think, that's so important. I love that book just because, it talks about it not only from one frame of reference. It talks about how this can, in your relationships, in your business, in your personal growth, in your parenting, how just this concept of, are things like intelligence or growth or whatever, are they fixed, or, do you believe that you can grow? And coming into things with that open mindset does allow you to see all the opportunities versus either being tunnel visioned into something and you just miss everything that's coming by because you're head down making PowerPoints and doing those things, or are you actually visioning and thinking about things? So that's awesome. So you guys have been for 5 years now ish in your partnership and growing your company. Obviously, as you mentioned, you've had to be flexible to adapt business models, or as any entrepreneur should be, really just growth minded. So where are the markets going? What's not working? What could work better? Doing all those things. How do you maintain motivation and just really stay energized to do that? What are some I don't know, exercises you do, or mentors you look for, or content you consume, or maybe it's just a natural well of motivation within you? I don't know. But.
Well, the first thing is, one of the first things I did when I quit my job to get into business was I hired a coach. Actually, I had multiple coaches at that time, and so did Julie. And you mentioned mindset, and that was a huge part of that coaching relationship was mindset. And I had no idea. I'd never run a business before, started a business before. I didn't know what I didn't know. And so to have somebody in your corner week after week, month after month, to support you, to help you see your blind spots, that was invaluable. And, when Julie and I partnered up, we both started coaching together. And I think that helped us, because when you get into business, it's not just about business, right? It's not just about numbers and customers and growth and data. It's also, you bring your full self to business. your business becomes a mirror to who you are as an individual. And so there was a lot of work that Julie and I each and together had to do to heal our own wounds and trauma, to bring our best selves into the business. And so we did a ton of that work. And I would say, I speak on behalf of Julie because we've talked about this a lot over the years, is we are such different people now than when we first got into business. And we've learned a lot together through going through a lot of this. But I think in the early days, the motivation has definitely shifted over time. In the early days, it was just, let's just keep this thing afloat. Whatever we have to do to keep money in the bank, to keep fighting another day, let's do that. And so we did that. Maybe that first year was all about let's just keep this business afloat. And we barely paid we worked harder than we've ever worked in our lives. And we got paid less than we've ever gotten paid. And we were like, let's just keep fighting and let's make sure that this thing survives. Once it got to a point where we were like, okay, this is working, but now we're too busy. Now we're feeling overwhelmed. We're chained to this job that we created for ourselves. So then the motivation was, okay, how can we maintain the growth, but build in some balance and sustainability? And so we started to grow the team. And we didn't always get it right. We made some mishires along the way. And we found some people that maybe weren't right for us. We weren't right for them. Or hired at maybe the wrong stage of the business. But then the motivation shifted from just let's support our customers, being our investors, to how do we support this growing team, these people who have put their trust in us. And now we're responsible for not just, sustaining the business, but sustaining them and their families. And so the motivation shifted a little bit there. And then as we launched our coaching program to teach others how to raise capital and syndicate, then it was also even a bigger ripple effect of, okay, all these people have put their trust in us. Some of them have quit their jobs to start this business. How can we then support them in growing their businesses? And so I think it's really all along, it's been about the motivation has been about how can we make that greatest impact and help others, which is always the reason that we got into this. It was never about the money, but it was always about that impact.
Yeah, that's awesome. I was just about to ask about that very fact. So, a lot of motivation can come from an intrinsic need to survive. Like you said, in those early days, you were trying to keep the business afloat and keep things going. But it sounds like you didn't need it to survive as a family, right? Like it sounds like you guys had, an income. Okay, maybe it would hurt to not have some kind of income, but that wasn't necessarily the motivator. Was to do that. It was really just, and so what was it for you in those early days? And even still, I mean, now it sounds like it's very much, and I think a lot of us go through this, like Lidge and I have a similar thing, and maybe it's more of like a Maslow's hierarchy of needs, where in those early days, you are just trying to get your basic needs fulfilled. But then once you rise above that, it does become about a little bit of a higher purpose. Like, how can I serve others? How can I share this wealth and value and watch growth in other people? And I do think almost everybody I talk to goes through something like that, where it becomes more than about just yourself. It's about the reward of finding others. But kind of in those early days, what was there some motivation? Just the desire to have a successful company and be able to be, free, or what were those early motivators, or your why, I guess,
For me personally, I'm going to step into the woo-woo box for just a minute here.
Sure.
I'm a Libra. And what that means is I'm all about fairness and balance and harmony. And I think for my entire life, I've always tried to fight for the underdog. And that's why I got into teaching, is because I saw this opportunity, these kids living in these high crime, high poverty neighborhoods, not getting the same opportunities that everybody else was getting, that I was privileged to have as a child. And I said, this isn't fair. what can I do to help bring more justice to this situation? And that's what led me into game design. I said, hey, how can we bring this outside of just individual classrooms, but bring these opportunities to more kids, more youth? And then when I got into the reason that I took that chance and got into real estate was because I saw that same inequity. And I saw that there was this opportunity around syndication and passive investing that nobody knew about. That was a country club investment that you had to know somebody on the inside to be able to participate. For generations, it had been that way. And so I saw that as an opportunity. I said, this isn't fair. I've been investing in real estate. At that point, I had been investing for 10 years and I didn't know anything about this world. And I said, this can't go on. People have to know that this is an opportunity. People are just putting their money in mutual funds and annuities blindly with their financial advisors. They don't know that there's these greater opportunities out there. And so that was the inequity that I saw at the time. And I thought, okay, this I can get behind. And I think that was the motivating factor for me to really, like, day after day, continue to create that educational content, because I said, even if I reach one person and change one person with this, is worth it.
That's awesome. I love that. Yeah. Did you have something? No. I just as we've been talking, I've noticed this through line of education, right out of college, university or in education, and then game design centered around education and all of that. So that's beautiful. Lidge and I share some of that. Like, one of our strongest values is a sense of justice, right? So we like movies where you get the justice at the end.
Yes.
Or one of the things that outrages us is seeing the injustice in whatever politics or business or whatever. So yeah, I can totally kind of align with you on that.
Yes.
Pulling on that thread a little bit more, something I didn't know about you, but I read in your bio, is this Money Wise Kids. Maybe talk about that a little bit. Yeah, I love that initiative.
Yeah. So something that Julie and I have talked about from the very beginning is, once we get the business to a certain point of stabilization where it can kind of sustain itself, how can we then expand our impact? And Money Wise Kids was one of those ways where we started to say, okay, well, how can we start to educate the families of our investors and the families within our community, so that, a lot of these adult investors coming to us, they tell us, oh, I wish I had learned this years earlier. I wish I knew this as a kid. Right. And so we said, why not? Let's go and teach it to the kids. And so we started out just teaching, basic money habits, financial literacy, investing, and entrepreneurship. And the entrepreneurship has really struck a chord within the Money Wise Kids community. And we serve kids from, kindergarten through 12th grade. And, kids are so smart. They're so smart, just intuitively smart. And, as soon as you give them some of these tools around, what is startup capital? How much do you need to start a business? What does it mean to start a business? How do you figure out your profits? As soon as we started talking about some of that stuff, that you could see their wheels start to turn. And we've had multiple kids within the program start their own businesses. And in fact, one comes to mind. Her name is Brindley, and she started a business called Brindley Bakes together with her grandmother, making cookies, cakes, and pies. And she, through what she learned in Money Wise Kids, she figured out how much money she needed to start the business. She leveraged others. So she knew her dad was in tech and she wanted to create a website for order forms. So she did chores around the house to earn the money to buy her website domain, and then worked with her dad to build the website. And then she started taking orders. And recently she started shipping orders as well. And so she recently sent us a box of dozens of cookies, and they're amazing. And so it's stories like that where, that's what we're in this for. It's not necessarily for the cap rates and the equity multiples. That's a big part of it, but the greater impact and the implications that we can have through the work, that's what motivates us.
That's incredible. Yeah.
Incredible. Mike and I go through this exercise now to find our unique abilities. And, when I started this exercise, I got a little angry inside of me because I thought, who has time to learn about the unique abilities? And we're busy working, but it sounds like throughout your life, there's a commonality. You love teaching. And I love that quote. I don't know who wrote it. That your job is to find your gift and spend the rest of your life giving that gift away. And we do have a unique ability, or we do have those passions that we are born with or we develop in life. And it sounds like you love teaching, and you just come alive when you just give back through that, and you teach other people to do what you do, and really to find their passion and to tap into that. So that's very fascinating to me.
It reminds me of something I heard on a podcast recently that, any time that you spend doing something that you're not passionate about, that is not your calling, the longer you spend doing that, the greater your chances are of becoming extraordinarily ordinary. And that hit me hard. I was like, oh, it takes tremendous courage to step up and say, this isn't in my wheelhouse, or this isn't what I'm meant to do. But, the longer you wait, the greater your chances are of just settling in and being ordinary.
Yes.
And so, definitely agree.
So I share a lot of similarities in your journey, I think. So, I don't know your sibling arrangement, but, I'm a first child.
I'm an only child.
I was also, my mom was a school teacher, and grades were it for me throughout primary school. And then it was university and a job, and it was this path. And I think some people can thrive along there and can do find a calling, a purpose, shine in certain ways. But I do think in a lot of ways it does stifle creativity, right? So if you're tapping into kids in K through 12, yes, they have the advantage of being new to this earth and not having built up the baggage around them such that they have this creativity. There's another something else that it made me think of was I think John Assaraf, I think, has a saying, the tenacity of children. Like, kids will come to you and they will just, why? Right? They don't stop. They do not stop. Often, some do. I did. Like I was a respectful. My parents told me no, and it was like, okay, well, it's a no. But I have my youngest daughter. She's one of those that will be like not accepting the answer if it's not what she wants. And I love that about her. Like, I don't want to stifle that, because it is, such a great characteristic, not necessarily to the extreme, but, to challenge the norms and to look at things in that way. And that's such a profound impact to be making. And just, I think about my dad. He bakes the world's best chocolate chip cookies. I mean, he gives them away. He takes them everywhere, and everybody, to a person, says, "Oh my God, these are the best chocolate chip cookies. You need to sell these." He's in his 70s though, and so he has a resistance to like, I don't know how to go about doing it. He doesn't have a dad who's a web designer who could stand up his website. So there's just enough barriers that he's like, I'm just going to keep giving these away at Christmas and to church and do things like that. And but kids can certainly be more receptive to do things like that. That also can work in the opposite direction, and it's sad to see it work that way when children are closed down, be it through the school system or their parents or just society. But I think we could do a service. I saw a social media post recently that was mocking, and it made me think about it when you were talking about things that people wish they would have learned in school. But it was saying something to the effect of, oh, those hours I spent learning the formula to learn the area of a polygon, they're serving me so well now. I wish, now that it's tax season and I don't know what the heck I'm doing with my taxes or something. It's these practical real-world examples.
Yeah. It's so true. And, I think about that too, because, I was on the straight A valedictorian path, and I realized I missed out on so much because I was just so focused on what was going to be on the test. Right. That was 100% what I was focused on. And I look at my kids today, I have 2 boys, they're 10 and 6 now. And recently we were just driving in the car, and my 10-year-old, all of a sudden, we hadn't talked about any of the recent deals directly with him. And he said, "Hey, can I invest in that fund you've got?" And I said, yeah, sure. Okay. So we got home and I said, okay, well, let's talk through it. I want to show you all the materials about it. And I started talking about it. This was a couple of funds ago. So this was a hotel fund. I said, well, it's a couple of hotels in this part of the country. And and I started listing out all the details. And he was like, yeah, I know all that already. And I said, what? How do you know all that? And he had just been listening to, conversations around the house, my husband and I talking about it. And kids are so smart. They just pick up things. Mm-hmm. And, we went through the deck and he was like, yep, I know this. And I'm like, well, tell me about this. And he's like, yep, I understand the risk here. And I know what the projections are. I know, right? And so yeah, it's amazing what they'll pick up if you just give them the opportunity to do so.
Yes. And teach them when they're young.
For sure.
Yes. So many things I wish I knew earlier, but I'm so grateful that that I know now and I can apply them now. But so many things I wish I knew.
I know.
All right. Well, let's bring this home. So, again, this kind of the intent here is helping the audience either take the leap into entrepreneurship or maybe their first investment or breaking through these norms and these barriers. So you have touched a lot of lives, and especially with Good Egg, I know you do your coaching program to help people with capital raising, starting up their own businesses. Maybe give us a couple of characteristics where you see people really shine. So what do they bring? What's a commonality that you see people develop that really helps them shine? And maybe on the flip side of that, where do people with a certain mindset or set of habits struggle?
I think the difference, and this is such a good question because now we've coached hundreds of people, and this has always been on my mind. I'm like, why do some people they come in and we expect them to succeed, mm-hmm. and they just get stuck in a loop? Or other people, they come in with nothing, and in a short amount of time, they've built up this huge success. And we're like, how does that happen? And I think it comes down to a few key factors. One is coachability. I think, we talked about openness earlier, and not everybody comes in as very coachable. And by that, I mean being open, being receptive, being willing to do the work that's necessary. We have some people who we're still coaching them on the same thing as a year ago because they'll come in and be like, yeah, I heard what you said last time, but I'm going to do it this way. And it's like, okay, they come back next time and they're like, well, it didn't work, but I'm going to do this other thing this time, and it just, it's a cycle. Yeah. And so I think you have to, if you're investing in mentors and coaches, then you've also got to be open to their advice and their guidance. And so I think that's a big part of Julie's and my success as well, is that with every coach that we've hired, we've always been very coachable, and very open and receptive to their recommendations. And so that's one, is being coachable. Another one is accountability. And, it's one thing to have a grand vision for your business. It's another thing to open up your computer at 9 a.m. in the morning, and you don't have to get anything done, but having that drive, that motivation to, even when there's struggle, even when there's uncertainty, even when there's difficulty, to keep going. And I think those people, those teams that build accountability in, they see the success. And so for us, what this looked like was in the early days, I said, we're going to send out a weekly newsletter. People said I was crazy. They said, how are you going to keep that up? That's going to be so hard. You're going to have new content every week. That's going to be so much work. You're not going to be able to do anything else. And I said, nope, it's got to be weekly or nothing. I know myself. And if I let it slide to once a month, then it's, for me personally, it's not going to be enough to keep me accountable. And so I committed to once a week, and every week it was, it wasn't easy, especially in those early days when I was just getting the hang of writing blog posts, posting it to the website, all this stuff. And it took a long time, but I kept that commitment. And every week the newsletter went out. And what that did was, over time, we were able to build up this vault of content faster than almost anybody because we were doing it consistently. And so I would say those are the top things that come to mind: that coachability, open-mindedness, and the accountability and willingness to execute.
Yeah, I love that. I just watched a great, it was a podcast interview with Stephen Pressfield, who wrote the War of Art, and he talks about that a twist on the accountability thing, but a discipline of opening up the laptop at 9 a.m. and regardless of what comes out on the pages, I'm going to sit down, I'm going to write, and then over time, you cultivate both the discipline and the skill set to put a story together or create whatever you're creating, whether you're an artist or a writer or whatever. But yeah, great tips there. And anything on the flip side of that? I mean, I assume the obvious is just people that don't have, that coachability or design in that accountability. But
I think on the flip side, there's one that comes to mind, which is, there, in our society, especially, there's such an emphasis on that sense of security and safety and making sure that you're making enough money, things like that. And I think sometimes that can stifle the creativity, the willingness to take risks. And I think as an entrepreneur, you've got to have a very healthy appetite for risk. And those people who are, more looking for security and safety, I think sometimes they're held back a little bit because then they're not as open to taking the chances and taking the opportunities. They might take a little bit longer to, vet out everything and until they get comfortable. And there's a great book by Stephen Covey, The Speed of Trust. And he talks about how, the extent to which you can grow your business often ties in directly to the speed at which you can build trust. And so if you can find a way to build trust quickly, whether it's with partnerships or with opportunities, then you won't succeed 100% of the time, but you'll be able to move faster than those people that get stuck in analysis paralysis.
Interesting. Yeah, I'm trying to, as you mentioned that, I just heard somebody that was talking about trust, and their biggest, their insight on building trust was about, in terms of the digital space, was about consistency. And they were saying, just regardless of your content, being consistent somehow associates and builds trust with an audience because you're out there every week or every day or whatever. You're posting something, and that definitely is there. Yeah, I mean, what you said resonates with me because throughout my life, I have been I have gravitated towards safety. Having a W-2 job. Then you get married, you have a few kids, you have a house, you have a mortgage, and all of that responsibility really, for me at least, and I think a lot of people, it decimated any level of tolerance for risk that I had. Like, I had to keep a job, I had to keep getting promoted, I had to be the high performer. That was my whole worldview of being safe. And I had throughout my life many instances where, and I'm sure a lot of us do, where you have ideas like, oh, that would be a great business, or I could do that. And obviously when I was growing up, it wasn't quite as amenable to starting your own business as it is today. When you have the internet and you have, the gig economy, and just there's so much opportunity right now that it's incredible. But yeah, I have felt that my whole life, and we talk about it on podcasts when we go or are interviewed or whatever. But for us in 2016, life really thrust us into a position where so many doors opened that eliminated the risk, right? My daughters were out of the house. We were empty nesters. We were both found ourselves out of work, and all of these factors, we were able to look at one another and know that it would be okay. We can take this risk, and if it doesn't work, we can try something else. We can get another job. We have money in the bank. So we had a lot of factors that lowered that risk barrier such that I was able to get over it and take the leap into entrepreneurship. And
and here you are.
Yeah, we talk about it all the time. We're so grateful for the life that we have crafted and created over the years, and that's a big part of our why, is just holding on to this. It allows us to be creative and to do fun things and all of that. And we love working, but it's not work at that point, because you're doing things that you like. And all of that. So, well, I want to be mindful of your time. I want to thank you so much for sharing some insights on your journey and what it takes to break into entrepreneurship, grow a company, work in a partnership, and do all those things. We certainly are blessed to have you in our lives and a part of our network. And really thank you for coming on the show.
Of course. And for all the listeners, I just want to say how much I admire the two of you. And if any of the listeners are thinking of working with you, investing with you, I highly recommend that they do so, because I admire and respect you both so much. I know you work so hard, and you always have the best of intentions, and work with high integrity through all the investments and all the things that you do.
That's super sweet. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
And if any listeners are inspired and want to reach out to you, what is the best way to contact you?
Of course, the best way to get in touch with us, learn about all that we're doing, is just go to our website. It's goodegginvestments.com.
Awesome. Well, thanks again for coming on the show. Have a great rest of your day. Say hello to Julie for us, and we'll cross paths here in the near future, I'm sure.
Will do. Ding, ding. Is that the end of the round?
That is, yeah.